What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Good Wolf Project. I'm your host, Jerry Scarlato. Today, I want to talk to you about how you have been conditioned to be weak and stupid. First, of course, I want to tell you that I probably don't know you. There's a very good chance that I have no clue who you are. So I'm not telling you that you're weak and stupid. What I'm suggesting is that we have all been conditioned, society in general has been conditioned to be weak and stupid. My argument is that that is on purpose. It is not an accident. It's the way that the powers that be want it to be. Because when you make people weak and stupid, when you make society weak and stupid, they're much easier to control. When you get them to a certain point, they'll beg you to do what is necessary to get them out of whatever situation they're in. And then you have them by the balls, if you will. So when I say you be conditioned to be weak and stupid, really I'm encompassing everybody. So yes, I guess technically I'm calling you weak and stupid, but don't take it as an insult because I'm calling everybody weak and stupid, myself included. We have all gone through all of these. We have all encountered everything, like everything we're going to talk about today, the different areas that have been built into our lives that teach us to be weak and stupid. Everybody has contact with every day. Every day. If not every day, every week, if not every week, every month. Unless you actively decide to do something about it, then you will continue to move down the path of being weak and stupid, of not being educated and building wisdom into yourself, of not having a strong mental and physical capacity, but letting other people tell you what you should have instead. So that's the goal behind this conversation. Ironically, I am recording this on New Year's Day. Most people, podcasts, personal development people, fitness people, business people are talking to you about setting goals and are talking to you about big ideas that you should have for 2025 and how you can make the best of it and so on and so forth. And yes, at the end of this, we're going to talk about how you overcome this conditioning, how you start to change and how you start to improve and grow and prosper, take control of your own life and quit letting other people control it for you. We will talk about that. But it's very clear that we as a society are not in that mind space right now. Donald Trump was elected by an absolute landslide. And that shows something that society wants. Society wants something. People in the United States want something. The problem is, it's very clear that most people are still saying, I want somebody else to do it for me. And what we're failing to recognize is that that's not the way it's going to work. If you solely and only put change into somebody else's hands, they will dictate the way that is. I believe Donald Trump is going to turn things around. I believe it's going to be an absolutely phenomenal next 4 years and potentially many years after that because of what he does, because of how he does it, because of the changes he's going to make with the people that he surrounded himself with. I fully believe that. And yet, he can completely fuck it up. Like, things could go very wrong. Who knows? And politics are politics. Like, he's still going to do things that I don't agree with or you don't agree with and many other people don't agree with because that's the world of politics. Like, that's the way that it is. So with that being said, what we're missing, what we're still not grasping is that unless or until society, the culture of society decides to take control of their lives and change the way the culture is, nothing's going to change. Things won't change. Things will improve, potentially, but they will just slip back to the way things were. Secrecy, conspiracies happening, all of this shit, people in the 0.1% taking power and controlling the masses. That's where we were moving. And if we don't take control, society doesn't take control of ourselves, of what we can control, nothing will change. That's just the way it's going to be. It's very clear that we're not in that mindset still. We're still bitching and whining and complaining that somebody's not doing something. And we're still in the same mindset of, I'm just going to find the fastest way to do things because that's the world we live in. I saw a statistic somewhere that instead of setting New Year's resolutions to lose weight or to get in shape, which I agree that that's fucking crazy. Like, just start today. Don't worry about starting on New Year's. Like, just start. It's actually waiting to start to New Year's that's completely screwing you up. But nonetheless, instead of doing that, Gen Z, like 40% of Gen Z is just going to take Ozempic or some other semaglutide. That is not showing that we are taking control of our life, because 0.01% of the time that strategy succeeds. Meaning, when you do something for the sake of having a result quickly and effectively without having to do much to earn it, 0.01% of the time it works. 99.9% of the time it does not work. I know that to be a fucking fact because I owned and operated a gym facility, a training facility for 10 years. I trained people for 5+ years before that. I've been in business and worked with people in business and business owners and so on and so forth for that amount of time as well. I've trained thousands of people. I've seen people get on diets and get on semaglutide and do all of these things to try and do things quickly without much effort, with little, I've seen it. And on all accounts, in all areas, those are the statistics. That's the way that it works. You will not keep what you do not earn. It is that simple. And we still want something for nothing. That's what we want. And until we change that mindset, until we recognize we have to earn our way, we are a society and a country of equal opportunity, not equal outcome. We are still bought into this idea of equal outcome or things for nothing. That doesn't happen. It can't happen. It won't happen. And unless or until we decide to change our minds about that and quit being weak, fucking, not ignorant, but stupid human beings, then there's little chance that things are going to change. That's just the way that it is. And again, I say that to myself because there's definitely plenty of places in my life that I need to do a better job of taking responsibility and not relying on others to do it for me. So really what this is and what this comes down to is a challenge. If we want to change, we have to change. That's what it comes down to. So at the same time, we have been conditioned to be this way, and that has been on purpose. So while my belief is the only way out of this, the major way out of this, is through action individually, we also should recognize the outside influences that have made this happen. Because whether we like it or not, we are all influenced by everything and everybody around us. Some of us more so than others. Some of us consciously, some of us unconsciously, most of us unconsciously, at least for a period of our lives. And so until you start to recognize that, wake up, pay attention, see what's going on, start to think through things and recognize what's happening, there's little chance that you can change that. And there's little chance that you can actually overcome that. We have been purposely conditioned to think and be a certain way so that we can be controlled. And there have been 3 areas or 3 categories of people that have done this primarily. 3 P's: professors, professionals, and politicians. Professors, professionals, and politicians. Those 3 groups of people have taught us and conditioned us to be weak and stupid. Now, another caveat, I'll go ahead and keep throwing these out just to make sure. Another caveat, I recognize that all professors are not purposely trying to make people weak and stupid. As a matter of fact, My assumption is if you're trying to teach people, you're trying to make them smarter. That's my assumption. I also don't assume that all professionals, and what I mean by professionals is primarily healthcare and, quote, mental health professionals, they're not trying to make people weak and stupid, or politicians are not all trying to make people weak and stupid purposely. I believe a lot of them do it unconsciously, or they get into the system and they follow the system, and it just so happens that that's what they're doing, whether consciously or unconsciously. But I believe that those systems and structures are created in such a way and delivered in such a way to make us weak and stupid. Professors are the people who teach us things, and the way that it is taught and things that are taught to us. We are taught specifically what to think, but not how to think. We're not taught how to apply. We're not taught how to create, not how to develop, how to problem solve, how to critically think through a problem, how to plan out the next steps, how to think forward into what might happen next. We're taught what to think. 2 + 2 = 4. I could give you some English grammar explanations, but I failed English, so I can't do that for you. Here's a noun, here's a verb. Once you get into college, this is the way, this is philosophy, this is this other goofy ology thing. This is the way you should think about it. This is how it is. This is what you should think. Not, hey, shit's going to be hard whenever you get out there. So here's how you problem solve. Here's how you maintain your finances and you invest properly. Here's how you actually think about investing. Here's how, if you're going to go into business, which is the most effective way to actually get what you want out of life. If you're going to go into business, here's the things that you need to know about strategy. Here's the things you need to know about planning moving forward. Here's things you need to know and learn about time management and prioritization and things along those lines. We're not taught any of those things. So again, while it may not be a purposeful thing from the teacher's perspective, what is being taught is not that it's not useful at all. Much in college, a lot of it is completely useless. But, whatever, like understanding some math stuff and English stuff. Yeah, you need to learn how to talk to people effectively. Although we don't do a whole lot of, speaking classes and things like that. Most people stay away from those, as best they can, because that's like people's top fear is public speaking. But anyway, so that's how professors teach us to be specifically stupid. They're trying to make us smart, but they don't actually tell us what the world's going to do to us and how to deal with it whenever it's time to deal with it. So we're taught how to listen. That way, when our boss tells us what to do, we just listen. Here's how you do this. Now just do it. Okay. And we think that that's the way that it is. Instead of us thinking for ourselves and us thinking through problems and us having to problem solve and us going, hey, what do I want the next, 5 years of my life to look like? It's just, hey, this is what you need to do. Go to school, go to college, get a job, listen to your boss, do your work, and that's what you need to do. Here's what to do. Professionals are a beast in and of themselves. Professionals, specifically healthcare and, quote, mental health professionals, used to be just psychology and psychiatrists, but now it's mental health professionals. That's another beast in and of itself. So, healthcare professionals essentially teach us that our bodies are weak blobs that don't have any resilience. When we get to a certain age, and that age continues to get lower and lower, maybe it's 40 or 45 at this point, which I'm 40, but when we get to that age, healthcare professionals start to tell us we need to start taking it easy, and when you have aches and pains, it's because you're getting older, and that's what happens when you get older, and Yeah, well, I took a step and I threw my back. Yeah, that's what happens when you get older. It's just your body's a tender thing. It's really gentle. You're a huge pussy. You just need to deal with it like that. You just need to take it easy. That's just what you need to do. And that's what they teach us. And that's literally what they're taught. And we're taught to just listen to them and let them give us all the medications and all the surgeries and all the stuff that we need and or they tell us we need, and us just listen. We're basically taught to abdicate responsibility and give responsibility away to them. They tell us what to do, and they convince us the way that our bodies are. We're not supposed to know any different. They're supposed to tell us how our bodies are. And because we've done that, we don't have any clue how our body's supposed to feel. We go to the doctor and we say, hey, I feel this way. And they're like, yeah, you might be sick. Here's something to take. You just try this. So with that, we have literally developed into the weakest and most diseased society in history, and we continue to plummet and barrel down that road at frightening speeds, regardless of semaglutides, which are actually making us sicker. But we continue to barrel down this road because we have given up responsibility for our health and we have handed it off to other people. Mental health professionals, on the other hand, are busy telling us that we are weak, mentally inept, just tender little fellas that can't withstand anything. Oh my gosh, Donald Trump won. Let's go all cry together. Give me a fucking break. we we've literally been taught, especially over the last decade, that anytime you have a feeling, you need to really feel that feeling. You need to hug it and you need to caress it, and you should follow that feeling and you should do what that feeling tells you to do. And it's good vibes only. It's only good vibes, and that's the way that it is. And really just live the feeling of life. Don't worry about everything else. And if you feel bad about something, just back away from it, and just move away if it's hard for you. Oh my gosh, hard work. Oh man, that's hard work. Oh man, I don't feel good about that. And and that's what we're taught. And mental health professionals tell us, yeah, it's bad for your mental health if you do things challenging. Like, you really shouldn't do things challenging. And yet, we have like something like 60% plus of adults are on some sort of mental health drug, SSRI. Like, that's insane. How are we getting better because of all this nonsense? There are no results are not there to show that we're getting better. We're getting dumber, we're getting weaker, we're getting mentally weaker because we're moving away from all the things that make us strong, fucking resilient people. And then of course politicians, they tell us what to believe. They tell us how, what the way things are. And whenever we question things, they tell us things are too complicated and that, well, this is just politics. You just don't understand. They literally take, it's probably not on purpose. It's just because they figured out that this is how you swindle people. But human beings have these things called biases. One of the biases that we have is called complexity bias. We tend to make things more complex than what they really are. And we tend to believe that things that are complex are important and real valuable. So politicians will tend to go, oh, it's real complex. Healthcare professionals do this shit too, by the way. But it's real complex. Politics is just a really complex thing. I can't explain this to you, but it's important that we do things this way because of some politician mumbo jumbo. And the more mumbo jumbo you make it, the more professional it sounds, the more important it sounds, and the more we buy in. That's why bills that go through Congress are 15,000 pages long, because you go, 15,000 pages, that's got to be really important. No, it's all bullshit. You could probably narrow it down to less than 1,500 words and still get the same effect out of it, or get a better effect. But nonetheless, that's the groups. We have professors, professionals, and politicians that have taught us to be weak and stupid. And they have done it specifically by, number one, teaching us to abdicate responsibility. Give responsibility to somebody else. Don't take responsibility for yourself. In politics, don't take responsibility for your finances. We're going to take care of you when you retire. We'll take care of you if you don't get a job. We'll take care of you if you're out of a job for a while through welfare. Don't you worry about taking care of yourself. We'll take care of you. They also tell us what to do instead of teach us how to think and how to do. Instead of teaching us how the world works and how we need to work with the world and problem solve, they just teach us 2 + 2 is 4. They teach us, hey, sit down and do this job. Sit down and do this work. And that's the way that we're taught. And instead of how to actually be a human, how to communicate, how to understand, truly understand the psychology of a human being and how to communicate through that. How to have a crucial conversation with somebody, a challenging conversation, goodness forbid. That is bad for your mental health, by the way. Run away from that. It makes me uncomfortable. And then they talk through complex terms to make us feel dumb and stupid, and so that they can then just tell us what to do. I already told you how politicians do this, but healthcare does this as well. If you question a healthcare professional, they'll go, well, you just won't, it's hard for me to explain, and you just won't understand, and it's not that important for you to know anyway. AKA what that means is they don't really know, but here you need to take this thing. It's important. So that's how we have slowly been conditioned. And if you take just 3 seconds to think about your life and think about the interactions with those different groups, you'll recognize that that's what's going on. That's what's happening. When you go to the doctor just tells you what to do. If you ask, they go, oh, don't worry about it. Here, just do. If you go, if you're in school and you ask and you actually start to probe a question, teacher gets pissed off and tells you, quit asking questions and just do. Okay. What? I just want to know. I just want to understand. So if you think through it, that's what happens. So why has this shift happened? What are they shifting us to? Or what happened along the way? And what are we moving toward instead? Why are our results the opposite of what they're purportedly trying to get to? They're purportedly wanting to make us healthy. They're purportedly wanting to make us strong. Schooling's supposed to make you smarter. Healthcare is supposed to make you healthy. All of these things are supposed to be happening, but why is it not happening? Well, it's very simple. And I'm going to go through this parts of this paper here in a bit, but in the early to mid 1900s, a shift happened. And basically that shift was away from results and toward ideology and dogma and science. Away from what actually happens, what actually works, the outcomes that actually come from the things that we do and the things that are taught and the changes that we make in our lives, versus an ideology, aka academia, science, which is what we've been told how many times over the last 5 years, you got to trust the science, and dogma. This is the way things are because I said that this is the way things are, and you don't need to question them. And it started to happen in pretty much all areas of society around early to mid 1950s. Now, I'm not suggesting that having new ideas, having science, are things that we shouldn't do. You can only progress if you have new ideas. You can only figure out an outcome that you want to test by going through the scientific process. That's how it works. So those things are necessary. They need to be there. But if the results ain't adding up, then it doesn't make sense. For instance, there's many, many political things that have been pushed down society's throat that are the, quote, biggest issues of today that most of society could give a fuck about. Transgenderism, which I'm very confused about. Still, by the way, I'm like, where did this word come from? And what I still don't know the way they talk. I'm like, I don't even know what this. Anyway, that came about as an ideology through academia. Academia was like, hey, I've been talking to a lot of people, and through my studies, I have recognized that some people are confused about what they are, or what gender they are. And some of them want to be boys who are girls, and some of them are girls who are boys. Some of them want to be neither. So maybe there's this idea that we can be whatever we want to be. And then it was pushed in society, and now we're a bunch of dumbasses because of it. Most people don't care about it. And yes, it is one of the biggest, quote, political issues of today. It's pure ideology, is all that it is. But it is one of the biggest political issues of today. Now, if you want to think you're a boy or a girl, whatever you are, that's cool. Like, you be you, that's cool. And that's the way that it was before all this shit blew up. Transvestites, for those of us that are over 30 years old, I think that's what transgender people are. I'm still confused about that, but I think they're really just transvestites, and now we just put a kinder name to it. But there were transvestites before all of this happened. Drag queens, like, all that stuff was a thing. Cool, great. Like, I'm from Louisiana. We'd go down to Bourbon Street, drag queens everywhere. Go to a drag queen show. Cool, great, that's fun. Like, but hey, you get to do your thing, and you're going to do it in your place, in your area. Now, they're pushing it to everybody else, and everyone's pissed about it. And because of ideology and academia pushing it on us, we're pissed about it instead of just being like, hey, cool, you do your thing. So that's one way that it's ruining and making us weaker as a society, by pushing ideologies that, like, to everybody, for an idea that a small fraction of people want to even dabble in. Cool, they can dabble all they want, but 99% of society doesn't want to dabble. So I want to go through pieces of this paper real quick to help us understand how this shift happened. This is talking about the development of the change in conversation around old age. The name of this article, it's a research article from University of Michigan. This was from 1999 or something like that. I forget when this came out, but it's 20 years old or so. Not that it matters. Basically what they did is they went back and they researched literature from between 1900 and 1950. Literature specifically talking about old age. And they paid attention to who the people were that were talking about it, and then how the conversation changed about it during that time. So I'll read through a couple passages so that we can start to understand what this change is. Like I said, this is specifically about old age, but you could pretty much, any area of society or any area of life can be plugged into this idea, as we'll see. All right, first, they're speaking about the years between 1900 and 1920. This says, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, most people looked to popular sources for information about health and illness, and older people themselves were considered the most important sources of information about growing old, staying healthy, and prolonging life. These older people did not form a self-conscious group or an identifiable population, nor was there a specific age at which someone might be considered old. However, to the extent that anyone looked to experts on the subject of old age, older people served this role. So in the early 1900s up till 1920, if you were like, hey, I wonder what it's like to be old, let me go to Johnny over here who's 85 and I'll ask him. And people trusted 85-year-old Johnny. Like, Johnny's like, yeah, whenever you get old, like, you're going to go through some shit. Stuff's going to hurt from time to time. And here's what's going to happen. Like, you're going to fall down. You better get back up if you fall down and figure it out. If you don't, then you're going to stay down. And that's the way it's going to be. And you trust him. And old people wrote about that in the early 1900s. in newspapers and magazines of the time, old people wrote about what it was like to be old, the ailments that they had, how they had to overcome them, and all of that. It also says, during the same time period, quote, writers who did identify specific ailments connected to old age emphasized that it was possible to entirely avoid these negative consequences of the aging process. Let me reread that quote. Writers who did identify specific ailments connected to old age emphasized that it was possible to entirely avoid these negative consequences of the aging process. Some cautioned against the perils of an infirm body or mind, and argued that the best way to avoid these was to think youth and health instead of old age and decay. Others emphasized the importance of avoiding limitations or restrictions just because of age. What do people tell us now? What does healthcare tell us specifically? That when you get old, you're going to fall apart. When you get old, you get dumb. When you get old, you get stupid. You lose your mind. Your body falls apart. That's what we're told happens, and that's what happened to most people. 1900, old people were like, hey, you can overcome this shit if you just keep your mind up. Look at me. I'm 85 and I'm still smart. I'm sitting here talking to you and having a great conversation and everything's good. And I'm probably smarter than you and I can still outwit you. I can still move well and get on a horse and all of these things. And if you just do some basic stuff and you don't think that you're old and you believe that you can be healthy and vital whenever as you age, then that's what will happen. It's literally what they wrote about. Okay, last. During the same time period, quote, if physicians discussed limitations in old age, popular commentators rejected their advice. AKA, if an old person went to a physician and the physician was like, hey, you're old, you shouldn't do things, they wouldn't listen. Do we question physicians today? No, we need to listen. We need to give up responsibility for our health and listen to them. Quote, instead, authors within the popular literature embrace promises to extend life with or without professional help. For example, some older individuals were interviewed on their ability to sustain their activities in old age, and many pointed out that their successes, in spite of their physicians' pronouncements about their health or abilities. Although many admitted to seeking advice from their physicians, they also often described the errors that their physicians made in advocating too much restriction in areas such as diet and activity. Go fuck yourself, physicians. Yeah. That's essentially what I think about that. But nonetheless, that's what they're teaching us. Like, we are literally, if you go back and listen to those segments again, it is unheard of for any of that to happen today. For people to believe that they can overcome things as they get old and they don't have to be old and crippled and decrepit and dumb and, lose their minds. And most people wouldn't even think about questioning their physician. Wouldn't even think about it, even though their physician's on 3 medications and 50 pounds overweight. Okay, here's how the shift, or when the shift happened. And you'll see a drastic change in what happens during this time. So this is late 1930s through 1950. Quote, before the 1930s, older people did not retire because of advanced age and, in fact, stayed in the workplace until they had sufficient funds to retire. AKA, people just kept working because they can work. However, by the early 1930s, especially in the wake of the Depression, retirement in old age was considered essential to help younger workers find jobs. During this time, the increasing numbers of older people came to be seen as adding a burden to American society. So essentially, this is when we started telling old people that they are not useful to society anymore, and you need to just go away, and we're going to put you in a home instead of take care of you or allow you to go out and actually be active. And this is the way you're actually going to live your life. Quote, by 1935, when Social Security was enacted, old people as a specific group requiring economic intervention was firmly established. Thank you so much for that. FDR, I believe, established Social Security. Yeah, thanks for that, FDR. Quote, during the 1930s, a number of psychologists began to expand their work on childhood psychology to encompass old age. However, although these psychologists were intent on defining what was normal for older people, they determined normal ability for older people by comparing them with children and young adults. In other words, psychologists at the time, and this is where like the foundation of psychology, today's psychology is built on for the aging population, is built on this idea. Recognize how stupid this is. Psychologists at the time thought that it was a good idea to compare the mental abilities of an 80-year-old to those of an 8-year-old. And because the 80-year-old's mental capacity wasn't as good, or their abilities weren't as great, then they were deemed as dementia or losing their minds or incapable of having capacity for their brains, because they were comparing them to 8-year-olds. It's like comparing an apple to an orange and holding them up and taking a bite out of the orange and going, ugh, that's very, ugh, it doesn't have any flavor to it, and that's nasty. And take a bite out of the apple, you're like, well, that's really good. This apple is much better than this orange, and that's the way that it is. Well, yeah, it's an apple and an orange. Like, that's the dumbest thing ever. And yet these psychologists were comparing old people to young people in their mental capacities. Quote, in their portrait of a life trajectory of measurable qualities, psychologists showed that individuals peaked in childhood and declined at old age. Sure, like I don't argue against that at all. Decline in old age, by what marker is the question? That's what is missing from all of this. Although psychologists were genuinely trying to expand scientific knowledge regarding old age, their bias toward children may have helped to further the growing idea that old age meant degeneration and declining ability. So even the authors in this admit, like, they kind of fucked up and they shouldn't have compared them to children. Like, compare a mentally healthy 80-year-old to a declining 80-year-old and see the difference between two, and then figure out what the healthy one did and what the unhealthy one did. That's comparing apples to apples. Quote, as with psychology, the growing medical interest in old age may have unintentionally helped advance the idea that old age is accompanied by an inevitable pathology. The national presence of a medical specialty devoted to old age came about with the 1942 formation of the American Geriatric Society. Geriatricians attempted to differentiate normal and abnormal aging and define appropriate professional intervention. In the process, although they were not successful in maintaining as their domain all of the medical problems of old age that they initially claimed for their specialty, they did succeed in alerting the medical profession to some of the unique rewards and challenges of treating older people, aka the money that is to be made in treating older people. So I laugh because, let me go back and read that and I'll tell you why I laughed. Geriatricians attempted to differentiate normal and abnormal aging and define appropriate professional interventions. In the process, although they were not successful in maintaining as their domain of all the medical problems of old age that they initially claimed for their specialty, aka that jumble of sentence, like word, really means instead of them keeping their focus on the difference between good aging and bad aging, they just focused on aging in general. They just like clumped it all together, and they decided to focus on the potential profitability of this instead of the actual, like, how we could improve this and make things better. That's what that means, and that's why that's hilarious. So, as you can see, just through that paper alone, the name of that paper is Popular Reviews of Old Age in America, 1900 to 1950. You can go look that up and read the whole thing. It's very intriguing. I highly encourage that you read it. When you find it, you will not be able to access it, but you can go to a site. Here's another wonderful thing about academia is they try and make money off of and block everything that we've already paid for. Our taxes pay for their research, and then they try and make us pay for their research after they've published it. So when you go find a paper and it's blocked and you can't read the whole thing, go to the site www.sci-hub.us maybe. I can't remember what's after that. That's terrible. Anyway, go to that site, copy and paste the URL for the article, and most of the time it'll give you the whole article for free because we've already paid for the damn thing. But at any rate, what you see in there is a shift from old people talking about the way things are and how you can overcome the things that can happen in old age if you don't take care of yourself. And they believe that, hey, if you just take care of yourself and you do things, then here's the result that you're going to get. Here's what's going to happen. If you applied this thing in life, here's how you need to live your life. Here's how you need to do it. Here's how you need to make changes. Here's how you need to think. Here's how you problem solve in order for this not to happen. That's what they taught. Then it shifted to, no, this is what you need to do. It shifted to teaching us what to think instead of how to think. It taught us that we should think of old age as being decrepit and old and dying and mentally ill. That's the way we should think about old age. Instead of how you need to overcome all of this. It also taught us to listen to, in the beginning, in the early 1900s, old people didn't listen to their doctors. They didn't. And they were better off for it. Their doctors would tell them something, they would do the opposite, and they were better. I would argue that it is the exact same today, by the way. And yet, in the 1930s, 1940s, and 1950s, all of that changed. They taught us how to think or what to do, and they took responsibility away from us instead of empowering us to be better. And then they started creating things like the Geriatric Society and so on and so forth to make things sound more complex and more important. And that's the shift that happened. And if you look at any area of life, the same shift happens around that time. And if you pay attention again to how people, professionals, professors, and politicians talk, that is how they talk. It's too complex for you to understand, you dumb person. Just listen to what I say and do as I say. That's what happens. Okay. So, what time we got? All right. We are rolling right along. Let's talk about a couple of things that we can do then to overcome the conditioning that we've had. First of all, conditioning is hard to overcome, especially if you're an adult. You have been conditioned for many, many decades. That's challenging. But as Carl Jung once said, unless or until you make the unconscious conscious, it will dictate your life and you will call it fate. So today, your goal is to start making these things a conscious part of your life. These areas that we're bombarded with that tell us how to think, that tell us what we should think, and not actually how to apply anything and actually get results in life. Your goal is to wake your eyes up and your mind up to how that's happening to you, because it's happening to everybody. And until you start digging into that brain and paying attention, it will just continue to happen. And you'll continue to convince yourself that this is just the way things are for me. And this is just how it is. And this is how life is. And it's so unfair. And I have just been shit on my whole life. And that's just the way that it is. Instead of recognizing, oh, maybe I was just taught a bunch of lies. And I believed it for a long time. Yeah, that kind of sucks. Okay, I was an idiot for a while, but I can change that. And you can, and you will, if you choose to do it. So first thing is to question. That's the best place, not the best place, but that is a great place to start. If we're taught by these people, these professionals and these professors and politicians, and they're telling us what to do and and getting us not to ask questions, the first thing is to question. Why should I do this? Is there another way to do it? What if I did things this way? What is your opinion on if I did things this way? It's to question. Again, we've been taught not to question authority, and all of these people, for some reason, are looked up as authorities. But if you shift your mind to respecting people who earn your respect because they have given you some value that has created something in your life, instead of respecting people because they have some titles around their name, if you shift your mindset about that, then you can start to actually just go, okay, this is just a person. So let me just ask some questions. I just want to know why you think this way. Why you think I should take this medication? How useful is it? What's the true statistics behind it? And if they start giving you some mumbo jumbo like, oh, that's not important. Oh, it's something like this. Oh, it's something, but that's not, you don't need to know any of that. You go, okay. When that starts to happen, then you'll recognize how full of shit they actually are. Okay, so you start to question. And then you start to look for yourself. If someone tells you this is the way things are, start to ask, is that the way things are? Start to ask yourself, and then start to look, and then do some research. You don't have to do this in all areas of life. I'm not trying to make you, be overwhelmed with so on and so forth and nonsense. But if you want to get yourself out of the area of life that you're in and you want to make a difference in your life, it requires you doing some thinking. Goodness forbid. So you have to start asking questions. You have to start looking and thinking for yourself. You have to start asking, is it true? Is this true, whatever this person is telling me, or whatever I'm being taught and told the way that things are? If I'm got my face stuffed in Instagram all the time and all these Instagrammers are telling me this is the way that I need to do things, instead of me listening blindly and then getting upset when it doesn't work, do some looking, like outside of, do some actual looking into it. Or yeah, fine, go ahead and try it for a while, but try for a while. And if it doesn't work, try something else. Which leads me to then, when you start to figure things out, when you start to ask questions, you'll start to get different answers. When you start to get different answers and start to look into things on your own, you'll start to gather different kind of information. But the only way you turn that into anything is when you start to actually apply it. When you start to actually do something with it. Knowledge is not power. Knowledge is only potential power. It is turned into power and wisdom when you actually apply it and then learn from the problems that arise from applying the stuff that you learn. It's the only way to do it. So ask questions. Why are things this way? What if I did something different? What if I tried this instead of that? Start looking into different ideas and different ways of doing things. Come up with your own plan on how to do something, write it out, and then apply it and do it. And do it for some period of time, at least 12 weeks for most things, probably usually 6 months for most things, no matter what area of life it really is. Do it. When it stops working, then change something and then try something else. And you only learn and become physically and mentally stronger through that process. It's basically your own scientific process. Come up with a hypothesis on how something works. Come up with a plan on how to do the hypothesis. Do the hypothesis. Come up with the results of the hypothesis. Repeat. Just continue that process, and that is life. And that's what you do. And that's how we actually start to take control of our lives again and change the culture around here, is by us deciding to do something about it. By us not going, oh, okay, let me bend over and you just, have your way with me. I'm going to actually do things for myself this time around. I'm going to actually make some decisions and think for myself. I'm going to actually come up with the plan. I'm going to use you as guidance, and I'm going to ask your opinion, but it's going to be your opinion. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. That's how we actually start to make a change as society. That's how we overcome this mental and physical weakness and idiocy that we have going on in our lives. That's how we live a life instead of letting life happen to us. And if that's what you want in 2025, that's how you start to do it. Again, this isn't a, hey, go set goals, go do this kind of thing. There's a reason I didn't want to do that because number one, I've done it in the past. Number two, there's millions of people giving you goal talks and rah-rah talks and all of that right now. I'm telling you, you have been conditioned to be dumb and stupid. Here's how, here's why. Now do something different with it. Choose to change. Be the person who changes the tide in your area, whatever that looks like. And if you're like, hey, Jerry, I'm just one person. I'm just me. I'm just Johnny. Well, Johnny, listen. You are the most important person right now. And without your action, society will remain the same. Do you have that, Johnny? Now do something about it. You are the most important person. Do something about it. You can. But you have to decide to believe. Do something about it. Thanks for listening to me babble. Happy New Year. Tear some shit up this year.